Volodymyr Zelensky met US President Joe Biden at the White House during the ongoing Ukraine-Russia conflict. Biden assured Zelensky of the US's full support and announced a financial aid of $1.85 billion. Meanwhile, Zelensky expressed his gratitude for America's support. Ramiz Raza has been removed from the post as the chairman of Pakistan Cricket Board. This comes days after Pakistan's Test series loss to England. The current board has also been dissolved, and Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has appointed Najam Sethi as the new chairman of the PCB. Indian pacer Jaydev Unadkat made a stunning Test comeback with his maiden wicket in over 12 years. Unadkat had gone wicketless on his Test debut, which came way back in December 2010 against South Africa in Centurion. Finally, it's time for Christmas, and cities across the world have joined #LightUpUkraine initiative to show solidarity with the country at war. New York's iconic Rockefeller Center's Christmas tree joined the fundraiser and went dark before coming back to life again. We leave you with that. Thanks a lot for watching.
Namaste, Jai Hind, and thank you for joining us on this edition of The Right Stand. We start with news just coming in from Tamil Nadu, where a startling allegation has been made by the BJP in the state. A post by Annamalai, the state BJP president, has now thrown light towards an incident that's occurred where the allegation made is that miscreants have pelted stones and vandalized BJP State Vice President Sasikala Pushpa's residence and also at her car. And this has happened in Thoothukudi district, in the Thoothukudi region. Around 5 miscreants who arrived in an auto and bikes vandalized her car and her residence. And a case has been registered by the Thoothukudi police, and the search is on to nab these miscreants. The allegation made by the state BJP is that these are all being sent at the behest of a DMK leader, and this was actually DMK cadre. This is the detail. This is the information that we have. We'll try and go across to Purnima Murli for more details, and Mugilan Chandrasekharan also with us on the phone line. Mugilan, tell us, namaste, tell us what happened.
Today evening, what we are learning from the police is that 5 miscreants who came in an auto and a two-wheeler started pelting stones at the Tamil Nadu BJP Deputy State President Sasikala Pushpa's residence, and her car, which was parked outside the residence, also was vandalized. Stones were pelted at the car, is what we are hearing from the local police. And from the visuals also, you can see the kind of damage what the car has sustained, and even the front portion of the residence also was heavily damaged in this vandalizing act, is what we are learning from the police. Now, after the incident came to light, we also saw the BJP cadres gathering in front of Sasikala Pushpa's residence and raising slogans, and they were demanding the arrest of these miscreants, and they have also alleged that this is a handiwork of DMK minister, DMK and the ministers from that particular district, is what the allegations by the Tamil Nadu BJP is. But now the police have started collecting CCTV footages in the area to narrow down and nab these miscreants who have pelted stones at the residence of Sasikala Pushpa. And it is very important to note, very recently there was a war of words broke out between Sasikala Pushpa and Tamil Nadu Minister Geeta Jeevan, and that is why now we are saying Tamil Nadu BJP alleging that this is a handiwork of DMK, and the DMK cadre should be arrested for that.
I have Sasikala Pushpaji with us on the phone line. Mugilan, please stay with me. Purnima Murli also on the phone line. But Sasikala ji, what happened? Namaskaram. Please tell us what happened, ma'am.
Actually, yeah, Namaskaram, sir. Actually, our state president, Mr. Annamalai ji, is doing very good work, and he is taking up the BJP here to get 40 out of 40 in the upcoming parliament election. That much he is working very hard. It has been developed after his leadership. Now, last week, our state president came to Thoothukudi district, and the local minister, Madam Geeta Jeevan, he allegated about the corruption which is made by her. She is the current social welfare minister, where a lot of corruption is going on in that ministry. She pointed out he is completely quoting the data-oriented corruption of the local DMK government. So this has been forecasted by him.
Right.
After that, the reaction was bad by the local minister in very atrocious way. Like she used the word, he cannot enter into the border of my district. He is pointing out all the DMK ministers and the corruption as if they have done. He's speaking about, and like that she made too much allegations, and finally she said, if he comes to the stage to Thoothukudi, I will enter into the stage like that. We will not allow him to enter into the district. Like that she spoken many and many atrocious words that the ideology of the BJP she challenged.
But that was with Annamalai. What happened with you? And the allegation that's been made is that the people who attacked your house and your car were all her people, were all from the DMK.
After her speech, the reaction has been given. The reply has been given yesterday evening by BJP, especially by me, in the stage of Christmas Day celebration of BJP. We celebrated the function because we are supporting the minority. So we even celebrated the Christmas by the BJP here in Tamil Nadu. By the advice of our president, we have to encourage every minority sector also like that. We done that. By that time, I have spoken about her issues, about in which way she spoken about the BJP's ideology and all. She challenged that. We given counter. For that today, too many gundas, especially BJP councillors, came to the house when I am not there. I went for the party work to Kanyakumari. They came to Thoothukudi, my district, and they spoiled the house, completely damaged the house and my car.
So you are saying DMK councillors came and DMK members came and vandalized your house?
Two of the DMK councillors came and with the gundas and they came into the house.
But the cops have not named anybody in their report. They have just said that they are looking at 5
especially a councillor called Ramakrishnan, Ravi, came with some of the party cadre by the advice of the local minister, and they are saying, I'm not sure, they are saying that the minister is keeping the two Gundas councillors at her house and challenging to the public that let the police come and arrest in my house. Like Mamata Banerjee, she is behaving here in Tamil Nadu. Like Mamata Banerjee, my president is struggling here in Tamil Nadu under the wrong leadership of Mr. Stalin. Too much atrocity.
Well, Sasikala Pushpaji, you have named a DMK councillor and you have named the local minister or the state minister who also belongs to Thoothukudi as responsible for the vandalism that has happened. We've got the pictures. The cops have said there are 5 unknown miscreants. They're still searching for who they are. But you are openly saying that it's a state DMK councillor, local councillor of the DMK at the behest of the state minister. Geeta Selvan is what you've taken the name. And said that they are the ones who are responsible for this attack. We would see how the DMK and the minister concerned, whose name you have taken, have to respond on this. I have to move on for the moment. Sasikala Pushpaji, thank you for speaking with us. That's the latest coming in from Tamil Nadu, ladies and gentlemen. Now, all the way from Thoothukudi and South Tamil Nadu to the north of our country, to Jammu and Kashmir. And this is something that we need to take note of. This is the story of Naya Jammu and Kashmir, and this is a slap on the face of all the propagandists who are trying to raise this Kashmir bogie time and again. 280 days and counting, not a single school closed, no stones pelted, and no hartals. That's the change. Let's quickly have a look at the hard numbers and then set up this entire story, ladies and gentlemen, as we bust all the propaganda and the canards that are being spread about what's happening in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, as far as tourism, 30,000 new jobs have been created, 100 plus flights daily flying into Jammu and Kashmir, 15,199 passengers per day. That's the traffic that Jammu and Kashmir is seeing as far as the air traffic is concerned. 79 lakh tourists have visited Jammu and Kashmir between October 21 and March 22. This is the data that we have had. So March to September or March to December data, that number has gone far higher is what we are given to understand. Economy, 168 MOUs have been signed, 13,600 crore worth deals have been now signed, actioned, 6,000 acres have been allotted for industries. The story of Naya Jammu and Kashmir, ladies and gentlemen, with regards to education, 7 new medical colleges, 25,000 seats in degree colleges have been opened up. More importantly, not a single educational institution has been shut down due to a Bandh or Hartal over the last 280 days. This is in the post-COVID area time when lockdowns had opened up and the country had opened up. Infrastructure, world's highest rail bridge over Chenab has been built. Connectivity is being trying to build. Railway lines are built all the way to Srinagar, and Baramulla is now is being connected. Chenab, the return of cinema halls in the valley has come through. 11,721 crore has been invested only on the construction of highways. 4,280 panchayats now have play fields, have got playgrounds. All this has happened ever since the abrogation of Article 370. But more importantly, the story of Naya Jammu and Kashmir is also in the fact that there has been no Bandh or Hartal since the last 280 days. This is the story of law and order. This is the story about normalcy and also allowing people a chance to live their lives. No stone pelting incidents reported. Over 550 terrorists have been neutralized since 2019. The terror infrastructure stands at its lowest at this point in time. And to talk further on this, we are joined live by the DGP of Jammu and Kashmir, Dilbag Singh Ji. Dilbag Singh Ji, namaste. Jai Hind, thank you very, very much for joining us. First up, nobody is talking about this. 280 days with no hartal, no disruption in Jammu and Kashmir. It's a story in itself that the world needs to sit up and take note, especially those naysayers about Jammu and Kashmir.
Yeah, it's a very big story in itself because we have been in a security scenario where Bandh used to be a normal rather than working days and the people working on all working days as a routine. This is perhaps after a very long time that we haven't had a single Bandh and any response to any Bandh call being propagated from Pakistan through its Hurriyat chapter sitting in POK. We feel that there's a big change, and in fact I heard it from the local people from Pulwama yesterday. They said that from Pulwama attack to Pulwama Tiranga rally, and then they said that from Bandhs for over half a year in a year, and today not a single Bandh in the market, not a single Bandh in the schools and colleges. And the people said during my interaction, during my visit yesterday to Pulwama, that they're so happy that their kids going to school without any break, and they're doing their business without any break.
Dilbag Singh Ji, pehle calendar chhapta tha Bandh ka. That's also now changed. How significant is it for the local people in Jammu and Kashmir?
Yeah, there's no calendar at all. There's no Bandh calendar as of now. Despite the fact that Pakistani agencies sitting across tried a lot to give that kind of calendars on certain significant events from their point of view. During Gilani's demise, they did it. Subsequently, on some other occasions, during the killing of very hardcore and high-ranking terrorists, they did it, they tried it, but they could not make it. The traditional days of so-called martyrs' day from their side that did not also attract any attention from the people. So I say there's hardly any calendar now, and if there is any bandkal, there's not a single response from city or any rural areas in Kashmir and other regions of Jammu now. It's a big change. It's a very big change.
But terror infrastructure is at its lowest. That's what reports suggest ever since the abrogation of 370. But there are still concerns, especially with hybrid terrorism and also the selected targeting of migrant labor and also threatening Kashmiri Pandits.
Yeah, these challenges are there. In fact, only the nature of challenges have changed. Much bigger challenges have been taken care of. If you say that today the terror modules, the hybrid terrorists are a challenge, yes, they are a challenge. But we've been able to bust over 130 modules of terrorists during the current year. That is not a mean achievement. That's a very big achievement. Any terror module coming up gets busted within a days, and entire module gets busted. So that is an achievement on the part of police and the security forces. Targeted killing, yes, but we have been able to solve all the targeted killings so far, barring one. That is again a very big achievement. Anybody involved in any targeted killing has been brought to law, and strict action under law has been taken against anyone involved in the targeted killing also. There is absolutely no leadership. There's a leadership vacuum in Lashkar-e-Toba. There is no leader for Jaish-e-Mohammed. Hizbul Mujahideen is almost leaderless, cadreless. All the organizations are by and large wiped out. There are very few of them who are remaining, and they are on our fingertips and they are on our radar. We are following them, chasing them. So now that most of the organization terror outfits have been wiped out, they have started a new trend of carrying out the terrorist activities to terror modules, some of them being handled directly from Pakistan. So they are also being targeted by us in a big way, and we are sure that we'll be able to take care of this new challenge also successfully and effectively.
Well, the sacrifices of the Jammu and Kashmir police and the security forces in Jammu and Kashmir can never be forgotten, but it's also huge commendations because it's their hard work, all of you put together, that this success has been achieved. But let me ask you my final question, Dilbagh Singh ji, what's the target for 2023? Do we see these 280 days becoming 500 days plus?
See, to 2023, I think it will be absolutely peaceful year. That is how we look at it. This year has been very encouraging. Hardly any big incident anywhere. Very peaceful year, and the lowest level of terror violence has been seen during this year. The largest number of killings over the last so many years of the neutralization of the modules and killing of the terrorists and the rest of the terror sympathizers and terror associates have been affected during the current year. A very big number of terror-related crime cases have been prosecuted successfully, and our action is on that front also. 2023 would be a peaceful year, and we would see a lot of activity, especially on the side of development and people's involvement in the development mission. That is what is expected of us. JK Police and the security forces all prepared for the new year 2023.
Dilbagh Singh ji, thank you very much for making the time and speaking with us. So that's the story, ladies and gentlemen. 280 days and counting. This is the real picture of Naya Jammu and Kashmir. No hartals, no lockdowns, all educational institutions open. Livelihood of the people not affected. Let's take this question, let's take this forward. Have the naysayers been put in place? The propagandists, will they now pipe down? All the canards that are being spread internationally, all that, is this now set to rest? Let's go straight across to Lieutenant General KJS Dhillon, former GOC 15 Corps, joining us from Chandigarh. We've got Dr. Nirmal Singh, former Deputy Chief Minister, Jammu and Kashmir. Yana Mir, Editor-in-Chief, The Real Kashmir, joins us. Farooq Wani, Editor, Brighter Kashmir, Senior Journalist and Columnist and Political Commentator, also with us. And Farooq Ranzu Shah, Chairman, Jamaat Atiqad Hanafiya International, and also and Kashmir Society is also with us. Namaste to everybody. Thank you very much. I'm going to start with General KJS Dhillon. Sir, you were there at the time when 370 was abrogated. What was the situation then? What is the situation now? 280 days of no hartal, no stone pelting, no lockdowns. How significant an achievement is this?
Good evening, Anand, and good evening to all my fellow panelists, and good evening to all your viewers. Yes, this change has not come overnight, and this change has not come because of one particular reason. This change has come because the will of the nation, the will of the Kashmiri people, who are yearning for peace after 3 decades of terrorism and deaths and bloodbath. So this is a net result of when people were asking for peace. And then came these initiatives of abrogation of Article 370 and the development and the infrastructure development and other developments which you listed out in the beginning of the show.
Ji.
Now here I would like to add to what my comrade in peace bringing, Mr. Dilbag Singh, DGP Jammu and Kashmir Police, we were together as a team when
Ji.
abrogation took place. Here I would like to bring in one thing, that this peace is a end result of efforts of all the security forces, the civil administration, the local population is the main key play here. And for this peace to sustain, the young population, which is almost 2/3 of Jammu and Kashmir's population, below 30 years of age, they have lived through this gun culture. They must taste the fruits of peace. They must understand how livelihood will increase, how their income will increase, how their social life, their personal life will be better when there is no terror. So once they understand and they get the feel of the dividends of peace, that is when the society will say no to the terrorism. And the way Mr. Dilbag Singh was narrating that all but one targeted killing has been identified and neutralized, this is because of the cooperation of the people of Kashmir. Now they want peace. They don't want targeted killing of innocent people. So they are cooperating with the security forces, and that is the result which we are seeing today. So it is a end result of all the people cooperating and coming together. And I'm sure, as you asked for 2023, 2023 is going to be even better. And coming back to your question, the portion of it, how it was on 5th of August 2019, I think we all know it. We all have the images of those times and how we changed the situation from what it was to what it is today. And today even people in Pakistan are questioning their establishment, that you have failed miserably on Kashmir front. So this is, I think, hats off to everyone and congratulations to Kashmiri Awam who brought in this change with the assistance of security forces and civil administration and all the stakeholders in Kashmir.
Very well put, very well said there, General Saab, and I'm going to take this forward because the desperation is visible. Now, what you said and what DGP Dilbag Singh said, Nirmal Singh ji, we are also now seeing manifest with these, propagandists and these fronts, puppets putting out lists of people. First it was Kashmiri Pandit employees, now they are putting out BJP cadre who've been freshly induced. Now, these are all signs of desperation. How would you react to things like this? Would you look at the 280 days and what's been achieved? Or would you look at these threats still coming through and manifest? Nirmal Singh ji.
Definitely. The figures they are speaking itself. You have seen that this time the tourist season was very good. The hotels were full. The youth they are doing their work. The students, they are going to the schools. The parents, they are very happy. So everything is there. And this is the answer to these people who are desperate, who are trying to revive the old, their old agenda, separatist agenda. But now the Kashmiris, they are not looking, trying to, ready to listen to them. They have become irrelevant. Hurriyat is irrelevant. Even the so-called mainstream parties who are soft separatists, they are irrelevant. But they are trying to find out certain things, these target killings and other things. But we see that challenges are there. The enemy is changing his strategy. But the government, our security forces, our army, they are doing very well. And ultimately, we are heading towards this Achhe Din. Achhe Din, they are coming to Jammu and Kashmir. And everybody is happy here. But these people, because they are trying to find out the political space for themselves by reviving their old, there's tested, you can say, separatist agenda, which is not going to, you can say, succeed in the forthcoming elections. but definitely taking liberty of this liberal democratic you can say setup here, they are trying to again raise this, but people, they are not going to listen to them. As the General Sahab has rightly said, the Kashmiri people, they want progress, prosperity, they want peace, they want that this development should go on, and they are also cooperating. That's why we are succeeding, the Indian state is still succeeding, the democracy is emerging after there's elections, the Panchayat elections, VDC, DDC elections, and which had happened after 72 years. That's a story in Jammu and Kashmir. That's a story of, you can say, peace.
Right, but Mr. Renjusa, should these threats actually worry the people, or are the things changed? Are these bluffs now being called out? Do you believe that everything has been achieved, or is there a lot of work still yet to be done? Do you believe that there are still people who are embedded in the system who are working against the system? These lists have been generated from inside the system. So is there still a certain level of cleanup that is required before we can say that, you know, things have really returned to normal in Jammu and Kashmir?
Yeah, you are very correct. Very there. What was the modus operandi earlier, and what was the functioning in Kashmir, and how I feel it was not a Jammu Kashmir constitution. It was the preamble of was Ziaul Haq's doctrine of Operation Topak was the preamble of that constitution.
Right.
Because that was to enter and capture. You enter inside and capture and use the corridor of the democracy to enter and make these polling booths the terror booths and get your people of your choice to vote, but enter, be part of the political establishment and rule. And that was because I am witness of so many things. I know there when Charshri was being burned, that is the Sufi shrine, was being burned. The concerned person in whose jurisdiction it was, he was of the rank of the sub-inspector. Rather than reprimanding him, that in your jurisdiction, Mazgul has entered and was taken out safely in the fire brigade vehicles, and you should be sacked from the service because it's such a big Rishi shrine has burned. Rather than that, he was given double promotion. So that was the kind of things like erasing of a Nil Nag, because it is in the name of Hindu. The radicals said, no, Hindu name is not acceptable. Nil Nag is in the Nilmat Puran. Bury it under the mud and the stones. And Government of India money was used to that same corridor of the channel that political rulers were there. I know the one minister in the government. He was coming and like Dabang, he was just rolling his tamancha, the pistol. I don't know whether that pistol was the license or it was from across the border. Using both. He was using the government power as the minister also, and he was using that aura of that pistol to bulldoze the officers around. So when that was the atmosphere in Kashmir, so how could you expect that the majority of the people who were yearning from 1947, 1947, it was not India earlier or Indian army earlier in Kashmir. It was the people's desire to be part of that, to be very clear. But there was the political establishment, they say, no, we don't want that part of Kashmir. Leave it, because it is not going to vote for us. So because of their vote convenience, Kashmir was divided. So it continued. It continued. Now today, I really appreciate Dilbag Singh's point, and very correctly said, and even you were the figures. There is a development is going on. Democracy is grassroots. Democracy is working. These panchas and panchayats are working. Democracy is also existing. At the same time, development is going on with full pace. They were telling, don't give access to the railway. They were sabotaging the government. Local government ministers were telling that if we will connect with the railway, we will connect with the India. So that was their mindset.
No, but imagine
Now,
imagine
we
these
can-
railway lines, if they come in, the goods train come in, imagine the amount that is of horticulture produce that will be saved. Even apples and the growers
Yeah.
from fruits to
for
flowers.
them
There is a
tourism
huge
collapse.
amount that will perhaps which will not perish and which will not be subjugated
It
to
will not
landslides
work.
and
No,
roadblocks,
no,
etc.
we are going to
when they want to
see
sell their produce across. I have limited time, Renzu Shahji, so I'm going to quickly look at some of the challenges as I bring in Farooq Wani and Yanamir, and hopefully we'll get a quick comment in, closing comment with General Dhillon. Now, some of the challenges that come out. One is what? You have to weed out the overground workers who are still operating within the system. Now, this is one big challenge that remains. Then, of course, there is hybrid terrorists, killing of the migrant workers and targeting them. Narco terror, which is again rearing its ugly face, and it's a reality in Jammu and Kashmir. And of course, constant threats which are being made to Kashmiri Pandits or those people who are coming back, not just Kashmiri Pandits, but those who are wanting to resettle back in Jammu and Kashmir, especially in the valley. So, Farooq Wani, how would you see this? Do you believe that this is a big achievement and it will perhaps set the narrative right? And where all do you think the challenges are?
Good evening, all panelists, especially Delon Saab. He's becoming more and more popular after the retirement, especially he's dominating the social media. So as you said, there's a lot of challenges here on the ground in Kashmir. The big challenge, I should say, is narco terror. Narco terrorism is ruining our youth, and so I was just my concern regarding this is we are losing the generations. Once it is not stopped, so drugs are being used immensely is going on the ground, so that this youth of the Kashmir, especially boys or youngsters who are indulging in these activities, so government must take stringent steps to stop this. Otherwise, days no longer when the entire Kashmir generations will be ruined. Now, if you as you said that. Overground workers are here in Kashmir. That is that is there, but government is doing their best, and especially the police is doing their job, and police, and every day is some. Today even I was just today I just read five Hizbul Mujahideen and some else have been arrested. So government should come forward with the stringent laws regarding this. So my concern is that.
Right.
So I'm just telling you once and again. Government should come forward and with the stringent laws,
right,
so that this drug menace will once for all should be stopped. If we'll go in the back in the history, as the Punjab.
So you're saying narco terror remains the
Punjab.
biggest challenge, and we talked about this, Yanamir, last evening as a rising concern. Now, how would you see 280 days? What big socio-economic effect would it have on the people in Jammu and Kashmir? Will it go a long way?
Anand, I've been just looking at your, your list of challenges, and I was just thinking over them. And what I conclude is that all of them can be tackled, and there is solution to all of them. For example, when you talk about beating out OGWs, the problem here is that we always blame the police. They do their duty. They arrest whoever needs to be arrested, whether it's the police, whether it's the intelligence agencies. Who is at fault here? Is the local lawyers who are actually running their livelihood by bailing out these OGWs in an easy manner. Become like it's a thriving business here. What do you do for a living? I'm a lawyer. I bail out OGWs. As easy as that, and then they go back to doing what they were doing. And then when you talk about narco terror, let me tell you that yes, the majority of our policemen are doing a great job in nabbing narco terror in their respective districts.
Right.
But then again, you can rule out the fact, and it is a fact, that there are dishonest policemen too, because I've heard of complaints where people have called me up and said that we've always complained about this particular person, but he roams free and he's a drug peddler. And he's been peddling all kinds of drugs.
Correct.
So
you're saying that we've got to weed out the corrupt within and also those who are working to break the system within.
No, what I'm saying is you can never weed out the dishonest ones. What I'm saying is that we need to reach the youth before drugs reach them. Probably drugs awareness events and webinars or whatever.
Fair point made. Some miles covered, but many more miles to go and many more promises or many more challenges to cover together. And we've got to do it together as a people, as a nation. I have run out of time, regretfully. So, General Dhillon, I wouldn't be able to come back to you for a comment, but I thank you. Thank you for providing perspective and also joining us on something which is important and which Bharat needed to take note of what's happening in Jammu and Kashmir and what the true story is. Hope you've got the real picture. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we are in exclusive conversation with a man who's turned around and said that we need to be careful. We need to be careful about those entities which are trying to judge Bharat. We should understand what their own background is. Professor Salvatore Babones on the other side.
Walk us through this rally.
Well, exactly. You see the Padayatra that has been led by Jayam Mrutyunjaya Swami Panchamasali Pita Swamiji, main head, in fact, this year, has started the whole rally. And there you see it's actually is going on right now in the visual that you can see that all of the Panchamasali Lingayat, the community members walking along the Jayam Mrutyunjaya Swami, demanding for a 2A reservation from the government. But meanwhile, while talking about the security arrangements, here you can see there is a heavy police deployment, in fact, to ensure that no untoward incident takes place. Now, remember what ADGP Alok Kumar yesterday also stated, that all the elaborate arrangements are all in place to ensure that no untoward incidents will take place, and the whole National Highway 4 of Pune, in fact, where this Padayatra is going on, will be blocked. Now, that's the whole reason, again, why we're getting to see a heavy traffic congestion also over here. There you can see a traffic snarl where, because the community members are walking along with the Swamiji, demanding for a 2A reservation from the government. And therein in the visual you see the KSRP police as well, ensuring that the law and order is in place, in fact, because in a democratic setup everyone have the right to protest, but in a peaceful manner, and no untoward incident takes place. So that's the whole reason why ADGP Alok Kumar also stated clearly that all elaborate arrangements are in place. All the police deployment, the police in fact from different districts of Karnataka have been called to Belagavi and to ensure that there's a police deployment, no untoward incidents takes place. And meanwhile, peacefully, the whole Padayatra will also go on. But yes, now the whole plan that they have to Gerav the Suvarna Vidhana Saudha, that won't be allowed, because they will be made to stop at a certain point. Now, what as per the sources that we are learning right now is that they will be made to stop at Raghavendra layout, and there they will be allowed to take up their convention and not move a step forward as well. They won't be let to Gerav the Suvarna Vidhana Saudha, where the winter session is on of the Karnataka, the short winter session. So that's the kind of an elaborate arrangement, as you asked, is been made on ground. But meanwhile, you see people of the community are in fact joining in the Swamiji now, demanding for a 2A reservation, because so far they come under 3B reservation, where there's a 5% of reservation, and they've been asking for the government to increase it to the 15% reservation, because they say they are from a backward community and they deserve to be included under 2A. But on the other hand, there is a technical challenges, in fact, that the state government also has it to include them under a 2A reservation.
How much the Lingayat community is trying to ride or rather milk to their advantage the fact that elections are around the corner for the state of Karnataka, because remember, the Lingayat community is a community which is also largely appeased by the BJP in Karnataka, and we've seen occasions when even the Congress in Karnataka has tried to reach out to the Lingayat community.
Well, this is an interesting question as well, but yes, of course, the Lingayat community plays a very important role, because that's the dominant community here. Almost 16 to 17% of the population in the Karnataka is in fact of Lingayat community, and Panchamasali happens to be the one of the subset of the Lingayat community who's been demanding this reservation to the government. But yes, to talk about it more politically as well, we have seen how this community plays a major role for any party who want to come into the power. this community backing any leader, in fact, changes the fortune of the leader or the government, that we can clearly say as well. Because you see, in 1990, when Rajiv Gandhi had come down to Bangalore for a meet, in fact, here, so that's when he at the airport itself for the continuous riots that were taking place in the Karnataka, and the government was in fact been at a bad side for that reason, and that's when Rajiv Gandhi in fact declared openly, without taking any leaders into the confidence, that Virendra Patil, who was the a chief minister then and a Congress leader, was being made to step down from his post without giving a proper clarity. So that really upset the Lingayat community, because it was because of the Lingayat community that Virendra Patil had come to the power, and that somewhere upset this community, seeming like that the community does not play a role, or the state government does not know the importance of this community. And you see how the community also gave it back right then, that the later point it was the BJP government, and especially the Yediyurappa, B.S. Yediyurappa, the former chief minister, who also happens to be the tallest leader from the Panchamasali community, was being given an opportunity. And since then till date, BJP has enjoyed this vote share, votes of the Panchamasali, because this plays a major role for them. And in fact, Yediyurappa also constituting almost 10% of the vote shares, majorly comes from the Lingayat community itself. So that's how you see things have panned out earlier as well. Now this becomes the right time for the community as well to put out their word to the government, saying that either do it, because this is the last and a final call that they are giving it to the state government. If not now, then the repercussion is going to be there in the upcoming 2023 assembly election. So that's the kind of an ultimatum that the community is also giving it to the CM Basuraj Bommai. But meanwhile, you see what the community themselves also have to say is that there's a lot of politics that is also being played here, because you see Jayam Mrutyunjaya Swami, who is leading this whole protest, he on himself went on to say that there are few ministers, cabinet ministers, in fact, who are stopping it and ensuring that there's only it is getting delayed. And
Professor Babones, namaste, and season's greetings and compliments of the season. I know you are away on a vacation, but thank you for making the time. And because there is a lot that is happening, Professor Babones. So I'm going to first come to the aspect which I have wanted your opinion on for a while. We've just seen 2 assembly elections concluded, that is Gujarat and Himachal. The MCD polls in Delhi, which were high profile because of Kejriwal versus BJP, etc. Now, do these elections underline what India stands for as a democracy?
Well, they clearly don't undermine what India stands for as a democracy. What's very impressive about those elections is just how competitive they are. If instead of looking at the seat counts, you look at the underlying vote counts, anyone can see that even in Gujarat, Narendra Modi's home state, where if the BJP electoral machine would have any power to crush its opponents, if Narendra Modi as a brand would have any ability to sweep the state, even in Gujarat, the BJP won, I believe, 52.5% of the vote. Now, that in India's electoral system may work out to being a very big majority in the legislature, but it just shows how hyper-competitive India's elections are. I mean, we can see the same sort of thing in Himachal Pradesh, where the Congress was the beneficiary of the same thing, but the other way, which is to say that on just, I believe it was less than a 1% vote margin, Congress scored a sweeping victory in the legislature. And again, that's part and parcel of having a first past the post system, where it doesn't take large majorities to generate a big majority in the legislature. But both of these elections really show just how competitive Indian politics really are.
But many in the West have now, developed this coinage, elected autocracy, and they have opined that India is fast becoming one. Would you agree?
Well, I think here you're particularly talking about the Varieties of Democracy Institute, which is branded Indian electoral autocracy. I think they may not know what the word autocracy means. Now, to be fair, they are Swedish, and English may not be their native language, but an autocracy in English has a connotation of absolute power. That is, if you look up any dictionary definition of autocracy, it will always say, or everyone I've seen says, that an autocracy is an environment in which one person wields absolute power. Now, that word electoral autocracy implies that someone is elected to then hold that absolute power, as opposed to getting that power through some other mechanism. But clearly in India, Narendra Modi, for all of his popularity, does not wield absolute power. I mean, if we look at just the number of illegal protests that have been allowed to continue month after month in India, whether that's the protests over the port protests in the south, or whether that's right in the Delhi environs, the protests over the farm protests, the CAA protests, the fact that these went on for months as illegal protests, disrupting not only the public peace, but holding back development projects in some cases, or in other cases, holding back the implementation of public policy, inconveniencing literally millions of people. And the fact that they were able to do that, I'm not criticizing the protesters. I want to be clear. I'm saying that it's clear evidence that Narendra Modi does not wield absolute power in India. Maybe this is a misunderstanding of what absolute power really means. I mean, absolute power means China, Tiananmen Square, 1989, sending in the tanks and clearing the square. No one in India wields that kind of power. Even during the emergency, Indira Gandhi did not wield absolute power. She probably came the closest, but to say that Narendra Modi today is an electoral autocrat is simply to misunderstand the meaning of the term.
Would you also say that this is somewhere also insulting the voter? Because when the voter gives somebody an overwhelming mandate, to brand it autocracy, is that also insulting the voter?
I don't think it's intended to do so. There are other ways that the democracy rankings have insulted voters by not respecting the verdict of the voters as being primarily what democracy is all about. That said, I think this is really driven by a visceral dislike of, to be frank, Narendra Modi and the BJP. Now, I'm certainly no spokesperson for the BJP, nor am I opposed to the BJP. I'm just a neutral international observer who's studying Indian democracy. But this electoral autocracy language seems to imply that the people have elected someone as king, when in fact they've elected someone by a razor-thin margin who is broadly popular in implementing policies that were promised in an election manifesto and are now being implemented in practice. That's really the heart of what democracy is. You go to the polls with a manifesto for what you want to do, and if you're elected, you implement, or at least attempt to implement, the program that you promised to implement. I don't see what the problem is there.
Let's move on to the other larger aspect, and where I want to pick your brains a little bit. Globally, do you believe, and since you're a democracy watcher and you've also opined on what there are other entities like China doing, are we seeing a democracy versus autocracy situation brewing between nations across the world? Is there a tussle? And is China leading the autocrats?
I don't think we're seeing any more conflict between democracies and non-democracies than we've really had at any time in the last 30 years since the fall of the Soviet Union. Of course, things were worse during the Cold War. But today and for the last 30 years, we've had a continual confrontation of one kind or another between the free world and the unfree world. And that confrontation continues. I mean, China is, of course, the biggest, most serious problem in the unfree world, though, of course, most of the Muslim majority countries of the world remain unfree. Their people ruled arbitrarily by leaders over whom they have no ability to take out of office, right? So these are the two big challenges to democracy in the world. And I find that my own view on the challenges to the free world seem to be very different from many political scientists. So political scientists seem to understand the biggest challenge to democracy being internal challenges. The fact that people they don't happen to like are running for office. Well, that's par for the course in a democracy. I mean, democracy is all about people with competing visions attempting to attract votes. The real problem we have is that in a static way, and this hasn't changed much in the last 30 years, we have 1.4 billion people in China who are unable to appoint or elect their own leaders. They can't fire their bosses, so to speak. And we have another billion or so people in Muslim majority countries who are unable to fire their leaders. And then we have random other cases. You always have the North Koreas of the world, the Sudans of the world that have democratic problems. But these are the two big centers of anti-democratic, anti-free governance in the world. And they've been with us for, well, not only 30 years, but ever since they became independent countries.
This transgression, Galwan, Taiwan, and then Tawang from China, what would you put a finger on why they would do something like this? And do you believe that democracies should now start taking on China on these transgressions and this hegemonistic behavior?
At a very fundamental level, we don't know why China has been so aggressive. And when I say we, I don't mean me personally. I mean the real China experts, the sinologists whom I read. I don't speak or read Mandarin. I'm not myself a sinologist, but I read a lot of sinologists, and no one seems to know why China has been pushing so hard. There are many theories about that, having to do, some of them, that Xi Jinping needs that external enemy in order to cement his place in power. Other theories are that people are in the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, are trying to undermine Xi Jinping by starting conflicts, against the overall direction of the center. And there are a dozen other theories as to why China has been so aggressive. The simple fact is that China is pushing out across its entire southern and eastern frontiers. And I use that word frontiers advisedly. It's not pushing on its internationally recognized borders. Those places where China has internationally recognized borders have been quiet. But the places where its frontiers are undefined, like in India with the line of actual control, where there's not an agreed definition of what the India-China border will ultimately be, or in the South China Sea, where there's not an agreed definition. Well, I mean, there's an international law definition, but not one that China agrees to, about where its authority ends. It's in those places. Taiwan is another example of somewhere where it's not quite clear where China's authority ends. In all of these places, China is pushing. And this is not a problem. This is not a China-India problem. It's not a China-Taiwan problem. It's not a China-Vietnam problem. It's not a China-Philippines problem. It's a China problem, right? And it's a problem for the world. Now, can the world do much to help countries? I think countries have to try to help themselves first. So India certainly has taken an aggressive approach to pushing back against Chinese aggression. India will not stand. India is not pushing itself along the line of actual control, but it is not willing to let China push it forward. If we contrast that with the South China Sea, where the literal countries of the South China Sea have allowed China to push forward, I don't think there's much that an outside country, like, for example, the United States or Australia, for that matter, can do to help them. That is, if the Philippines, if Vietnam, if Malaysia, if Indonesia were pushing strong against China to maintain their own sovereign territory, they, I think, could expect the help of other democratic countries. But, other countries, other countries outside China. But if they're not willing to do so, I'm not sure what the rest of the world can or even should do.
You've made Australia your home. So let me ask you this. Are there people within the intelligentsia, the polity, who are sympathetic to the PLA? Because we see that in India. Quite contrary to what expectations are, there are many who would toe the PLA line. Your thoughts on that?
In Australia, relatively few. There are some, but there are very few in the intelligentsia. In Australia, the main pro-China forces, or I'd say the main groups in Australia who are promoting China's favored policies, let's put it that way. They're not necessarily pro-China regime, but they do promote China's favored policies. These groups are mainly people who depend economically on China. So to some extent, the universities has become a problem in our university system in Australia. The mining companies, the big miners, they export enormous amounts of, especially iron ore, to China, and they are always lobbying for a softer line on China. The intelligentsia in Australia actually has been much more independent-minded. There are some people who advocate that Australia should seek a compromise with China, but I think they're generally doing so out of the feeling that that is what would benefit Australia, not out of a not because they're in the pay of China. Now, that's different in poorer countries. I mean, the reason in Australia the intelligentsia is much more independent is that it's very rich, very well funded. They don't rely on Chinese donations or on under the table Chinese money. In poorer countries, even small amounts of money from China can make a difference. And this doesn't have to be corrupt. I mean, I'll give you an example that I've seen in my own world in academia. I've seen a lot of PhD students and even think tank personnel taking positions in China, or taking free trips to China, or getting a degree in China for free, paid for by the Chinese government. And they recognize that the condition of doing so is that they have to speak nicely about China. Now, for an Australian, it's not very attractive. Being offered a free degree at a Shanghai university is not on any Australian think tanker's wish list. But for a think tanker from a poor developing country, that might be a substantial benefit. And that's a lot of how China spreads its influence among the intelligentsia. It's not outright bribery. That may occur also. But it's not primarily outright bribery. It's the favors that can be had by being friendly to China.
2 or 3 final questions, Professor Babones. One of the aspects is G20 presidency and this year. Do you believe that India can drive a position on the One China policy, use the G20 platform to perhaps mobilize this aspect of moving away from One China policy?
Unfortunately, I think that would be an unrealistic expectation for the G20. First of all, China wouldn't permit it. And China is, without China, there's no G20. But more broadly, it's just not what the G20 does. I'm not sure that it would be in India's interest. That is, if India were to expend substantial political capital at the G20, would regularizing the status of Taiwan be its top priority? I think that's really unlikely. I mean, of course, from a moral standpoint, we'd all like to see our own country standing up for what we believe is right. And I think most people in India believe that it's right that Taiwan be allowed to live in peace. Most people in Australia certainly feel that way. Most people in America feel that way. But it's one thing to take a moral stand as a citizen. It's another thing to expect your government to put that moral stand ahead of other important national interests. I just don't see it happening at the G20.
The recent USIRF report once again put India, a vibrant democracy, which
the USIRF report, yes,
as a cause for concern. But the State Department did not do that. They excluded India. What's happening there? You're reading, and I'm sure you're studying those reports.
I am studying it. USCIRF, I use the initials, some people say USIRF, is a highly political body. So I think everyone should understand that this is not some kind of neutral arbiter. This is a highly political body that people in the United States fight hard to get appointed to. Okay, so people who are working on behalf of various groups in America desperately want to get appointed to this so that they can implement their clients or their associates' policies. So as they're working on behalf of other people, whether formally or informally. So it's a political appointee body. It is not a technical body. In the United States, much of that pressure comes from, again, to be very frank, Christian missionary groups. Now, I have nothing. I want to be absolutely clear because I know people take things out of context. I have nothing against Christian missionary groups. But Christian missionary groups in the U.S. do have a strong presence on Capitol Hill. They have very strong lobbying power, and they do influence the composition of USCIRF. Now, at USCIRF, one of the main priorities for Christian missionary groups is opening up India to missionary activity. Now, I know India is already open. India allows missionaries to come. India allows proselytization. I'm aware of that. But they'd like to see more openness. They'd like to see more freedom to act. And, they take the complaints of their people very seriously. So if a Christian in India complains about having a problem, that has a hotline to USCIRF in a way that if, say, a Muslim in India has a problem or a Hindu in India has a problem, that doesn't have a hotline to USCIRF. Now, the bizarre thing is that USCIRF's low rating of India, its vilification of India, has been used then by Muslim groups, and again, international Muslim groups primarily. I'm not talking about Indian Muslims. It's been used by international Muslim groups and U.S. Muslim lobbying bodies to beat up on India. So the irony is that it's complaints from Christian missionaries that are going into a report that overwhelmingly focuses on India's relations with Christian missionaries, that is then being generalized by Muslim activist groups to say, you see, we told you that India has a problem with religion. It's really very bizarre to see the chain of custody, so to speak, of those claims. And it has real world effects. So even though it was not picked up by the State Department, I think the State Department is wise enough to know this, but also, again, the State Department's a political body. Even though there are, and I would say the US State Department has historically been, in the India-Pakistan division, has historically been very sympathetic to Pakistan, much less sympathetic to India. And here I'm talking about the professional staff at the State Department. We had that ambassador in Pakistan who made the comment about Kashmir that was, really inappropriate for a diplomat. But the State Department didn't quash that, right? So the State Department is not so much pro-India as the State Department is a political body that has to answer to political masters. And ultimately, the Indian relationship is just too important for the U.S. for the State Department to compromise it on behalf of a small number of missionaries who are complaining. So this is all highly political. If you think about it for a minute, why is it the U.S. government that is raiding the entire world for religious liberty? Well, it's because pressure groups in the U.S. want that raiding. It's not because the U.S. government is a technical body studying freedom of religion.
You've sussed that out beautifully and explained that out beautifully. Come 2023, are you seeing changes in the US also? You believe that the Republicans will take control of the House? You've tweeted to that effect. So since you're talking US politics and US polity, I thought I should ask this question since you're watching. And is that going to set the tone for some interesting times ahead?
Well, here you've given me an easy question because Republicans have taken control of the House. I mean, not literally, they won't take office until January, but they've won control of the House of Representatives. And the big change that will make in U.S. politics is that it will open up the system for investigations. In the final 2 years of the Trump administration was investigated relentlessly. Why? Because the Democratic Party controlled the House of Representatives and they can investigate. Now, whatever you think of those investigations, the fact that there were investigations at all only happened because Democrats had control of the machinery of the House of Representatives. Well, now we have a Democratic president and the Republican Party has control of the House of Representatives and will use those mechanisms of investigation to expose any wrongdoing that may be associated with, not only with Joe Biden, but also with more broadly, the political system in the U.S. And for 2 years, we've had all quiet, not in the United States, but all quiet in Congress because the party that controlled Congress also controlled the presidency. I'm a big fan of combative politics. We should see our political representatives going to battle with each other, exposing wrongdoing. The way to see what's wrong with the system is to have someone who cares deeply go in and do that investigation for us. So I'm very optimistic as an American, not because I'm a Republican or a Democrat, I'm neither, but I'm optimistic because I want to see as much information coming out of the US government as possible. And with two different parties in control of different houses of Congress, that's going to happen.
Professor Babones, thank you so much for speaking with us. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with CNN News 18. You're watching Brass Tacks. I'm Shivani Gupta, and we're starting the show today with some breaking updates coming in. NIA has filed a charge sheet against 11 accused of the brutal killing of Kanhaiya Lal in Udaipur. Remember, this man was beheaded or his throat slit because of the Nupur